boom, extra very serious felony charge. You don't want to be caught with your pants down in that scenario. We're the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about how to find a two-way friendly lawyer should you ever be caught up in the legal system. Now, stick around to the end for a pro tip on kind of I'd say a landmine that exists in this field and something that you really should avoid. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And to start off this conversation, I think we have to acknowledge kind of the elephant in the room, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and that is that most lawyers are not gun people. In fact, I would say probably a vast majority of even criminal defense attorneys do not like guns, right?
And there's some evidence to suggest this, and we can draw some inferences from nearly 70% of lawyers surveyed in this data set that we're looking at donated to Democratic politicians, and not all Democrats and progressives and leftists are anti-2A, but we do see some pretty big trends there that we have to be, that we can't, just pretend don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I know for people who are already typing out a comment right now, like, that's not true, this person's Democrat and they love guns. Like, yes, we're here in Texas, we understand. I mean, I think it's miscongeniality. There's a line where it's like, this is Texas, my florist has a gun.
Look, he had a gun. Of course he had a gun. This is Texas, everybody has a gun. My florist has a gun.
Yes.
I mean, yes. I mean, they, gun supporters come in all shapes and sizes on the political spectrum. But just as a generalization, it's safe to say, if your lawyer is donating to liberal politicians, they probably have anti-gun leanings.
Yes, but it kind of begs the question of why is it important to have a 2A friendly lawyer should you be charged with self-defense or a weapons crime or something involving a firearm? What do you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think first we need to say being a good lawyer requires a lot of passion.
Yes.
And a lot of research. I mean, if you look at guys who are DUI lawyers, DWI lawyers, they put hours and hours and hours of time into learning the law and the science and staying abreast of things, and that's what makes them so good. If you just hire some guy off the street who doesn't know anything about guns, doesn't want to know anything about guns, and you say, hey, here's my money, handle my gun case, he hasn't done that. He doesn't have the passion for it. He's going to miss a lot of things that are really, really important in the law itself.
Yes, and I would say, we don't know what we don't know, but it's so important to have someone who understands not just gun culture, but firearms themselves. What's legal, what's illegal, what's typical, what's unusual, because, part of a lawyer's job is issue spotting and preparing for those things that may be raised at trial. And if you have an attorney that doesn't understand firearms, doesn't understand ballistics, doesn't understand self-defense or why somebody would even be carrying a gun in the first place, it's hard for them to be sympathetic should, they're defending somebody in those circumstances.
Imagine that you are on trial for murder and the prosecutor starts talking about your people killer bullet. You've just got hollow points in, and you've got an attorney who's like, I don't know how to respond to that, instead of like, no, this is why, these self-defense round, everyone carries them, this is what they're good for, and plus, I mean, I think this is not really my story to tell, but I'll tell it anyway.
Yeah.
We are close with a 2A attorney in the state of Virginia who was telling me that he actually had, and this is an example of the not 2A lawyer being on the other side, so it was actually very good for his client.
Yeah.
But he essentially had a client who had used what actually was an illegal firearm in a self-defense case. He had modified his firearm and made an AOW.
Yeah, it was a pistol with a vertical foregrip.
Yeah, and so like this, this 2A attorney is ready and prepared for these extra charges to drop for illegal possession of an AOW. And the state's attorney, because he didn't know anything about guns, never, ever got there. Right.
Yes,
the charges never came. It was never brought up at trial. Because I mean, he could have lost, his self-defense presumptions for being in illegal possession.
Think about it in the reverse. What if you had a lawyer who had no idea about firearms and is sitting there beat-bopping along thinking, hey, a gun's a gun's a gun. And the state or the judge even says, boom, extra very serious felony charge. You don't want to be caught with your pants down in that scenario. But I would say the other thing that's really important is, understanding your perspective, understanding your priorities. Some of these firearms are really expensive, and I've seen lawyers who, they don't understand, hey, this gun is maybe it's a family heirloom, or maybe it's particularly valuable. Why won't you just let the gun go? Well, for someone who's maybe 2A friendly, they know, hey, this is a fight worth having. If it's a high point, they know it's a fight not worth having. But if it's a family heirloom or something very valuable, then maybe they know, hey, the client doesn't need to bring this to my attention. I just know based on my experience that this is something that is an issue that we need to guard against. And how do you know an attorney's a 2A friendly or gun friendly or would be well suited for this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is research. You have to do research on the attorney you're going to hire. Start with their website. Your gun-friendly attorneys will generally say so somewhere on their website, which is a good start. Also, you need to ask them. Right? I mean, and Richard says, and I completely agree, when you're hiring an attorney, you need to treat that interaction like an interview.
Yeah, like a job interview.
Yeah. Talk to them about their experience with firearms. Talk to them about their likes, dislikes. Talk to them about gun cases they've handled in the past, self-defense cases, what their depth of knowledge really is.
Yeah, search news stories. If you search their name in Google News, do they come up on radio shows or on news articles discussing the Second Amendment or talking about these types of issues? And back to what Emily mentioned, that's what I tell folks. When you interview a lawyer or when you go to meet and consult with a lawyer, you should treat it like a job interview. It's a service industry. They're there for you. They're there to act in your best interest. And some of these things, being charged criminally or, these civil cases where damages can be so severe, you got to get along with this person because you are going through a very traumatic, some people, I mean, I'd put it on the list of, losing a loved one or a divorce, or it's up there. Getting sued or getting charged with a crime is very emotionally traumatic, and you got to have somebody that you can work well with. So I say treat it like a job interview, and your attorney's job, I think, at the end of the day, is to educate you about the process, let you know what your options are, the pros and cons of each of those options, and at the end of the day, you're the captain of the ship. You say where the ship goes, but it's hard to make those informed decisions if you don't have an attorney who really has the heart to teach you about the issues.
Oh, yeah. I think that brings us to our pro tip today, which is what to avoid when sort of going down this line. And, we sort of argued a little bit about whether or not to even address this, but ultimately decided it's worth talking about. There are self-defense legal plans out there who will make publicly available a list of attorneys that they recommend, that are in network, that they use. And our pro tip is, you can glance at these lists. Don't take them as gospel that the attorneys are actually pro 2A attorneys.
Or vetted or...
Exactly. I mean, we know of, these groups that actually will not even contact the attorney in advance before they put them on their list. They will put just DWI guys on, DUI guys. They're just because they wind up on a self-defense attorney or 2A attorney list from a prepaid legal organization does not mean they are actually properly vetted. You still need to do your legwork. Do not trust those lists.
Yeah, do your due diligence, because in the exchange is, hey, if you agree to be in our network, we will publish your name on our website as part of our directory. Good SEO on your side, good SEO for us. It looks like we have a long list of attorneys. So, while those things, we'll just say it's not dispositive. You have to do your research. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by, I would say, leave a comment. Tell us what you think about this. Have you had to use a 2A friendly lawyer before? Have you had a bad experience, good experience? But we want to fight that algorithm. Leave us a comment about it.
And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.